Hey everyone, Mitch coming in for the Crash Course Studio. Welcome to the show. So on today's episode, well, super early spoilers, which tends to be a thing nowadays for whatever reason. Again, it's like, oh yeah, okay, that card's coming out. When? Wizards is running out of things to talk about. Okay, so they need to show a card to be like, hey, future. Regardless, this is a very exciting one, and one that I think some people might call for it to be banned right away. I'm not one of them, but there is a very powerful effect on it. With all that said, let's jump into it. So, Emrakul is back. Yeah, you knew it was going to happen. You lock a cosmically powered entity into a moon, and at some point, it's going to get back out of that moon. Yeah, that's just how it goes, I guess. Regardless, Modern Horizons 3 is, I was going to say just around the corner. It is not just around the corner. I think it's like July or August or June. I almost the Thunder Junction comes out before that. And then for some reason, we're getting a super early spoiler for this. I think it was at Magic Con Chicago, I believe is where this previewed. Let me know if I'm wrong about that. Regardless, a 12/12 Eldrazi for 12 mana. And yes, this is a potentially just very powerful and disturbingly awesome commander. Here we go. When you cast this spell, gain control of all creatures target player controls. So, okay, here's the thing. There are 3 different ways that you can usually go about these types of effects. The first and most used one is typically on ETB. When this enters the battlefield, you get this effect. Now, am I glad they don't have that? Yeah, because like a simple blink spell be like, okay, cool, I get that again. Not good. The next way that they do this is more so this way. When you're casting a spell, you get that effect. The downside of that, I guess for the player playing the card, is that you can't as easily use and abuse it. You can't just blink and get that again on ETB, right? Because it's not ETB, it's on a cast. So you actually have to get it back to your hand and recast it to get that. We'll talk about that here in a bit. The third way, which is actually kind of what I expected this to be, is like, hey, when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, that's like the Zakama, essentially kind of one, where it's basically like, hey, first of all, you have to cast it, and it has to enter the battlefield. So you can't just use and abuse it with a blink, and also, you don't just get that effect if, say, this gets countered. But you do with this one. It's like, no. No matter what happens, as long as I get this on the stack, as long as I cast this, which I'm going to do, I steal all of your creatures permanently. Now, here's the thing. Flying, protection with spells and permanents that were cast this turn. When it leaves the battlefield, sacrifice all creatures you control. Now, again, because it does have this like weird like cast, here's the effect, and then also leave the battlefield, here's the effect. Yeah, I think obviously if this gets countered, and correct me again, rules lawyers out there, correct me in the comments below. If you cast it and gets countered, you're just permanently gaining control of that opponent's creatures, and it doesn't matter if Emrakul at some point gets dealt with because it's already countered and gone, so it's not like it left the battlefield. So you just don't have to sacrifice those creatures unless they're ever actually dealt with. So this is a gain control of all creatures target players controls repeat on a commander. Yes, it is 12 mana, sure. But then I also mentioned that it has Madness, Pay, 6, colorless. And actually, it is interesting to see that it's a 6 colorless, and maybe they'll start doing this versus just like colorless symbol, etc., etc. So it's harder to kind of read that. But yes, being able to get 6 mana instead of a 12 mana for a commander, that is pretty crazy. That being said, again, because you're doing it for the command zone, you're not like discarding it from the command zone to get that madness, obviously. That being said, yeah, we would like to just cast gain control of someone's creatures. When we're done with those creatures, we're like, you had the best creatures, now that player's got the best creatures. Let's maybe bounce this back to my hand, have a way to discard it, cast it for just 6 mana all of a sudden. Yeah, pretty crazy. Now, I'm not trying to skip over other things that this card does, because again, this is first up a 12/12, which is massive. Again, a 2-shot KO just inherently in Commander. And also, again, flying, protect from spells and from permanents that were cast this turn. Gross. So, okay, evasive, 12/12, again, 2-shot KO. And also protection from spells and permanents that were cast this turn. That's ironically, I believe, gets around what Imprison the Moon then, right? Because it's like, okay, cool, yeah, DTBs. Yeah, no, you can't imprison it again in the moon. Protection from spells. So basically, any spell that was cast this turn. So essentially, like every kind of instant sorcery. You can't just be like, yeah, cool, yeah, no stopping this. And then also, permanents that were cast this turn as well. So, like, if something has an activate ability on it, I guess they could activate right away. They would be able to do that. It's a very interesting and unique card. It's very, very, very powerful. Again, it has a very salt-inducing effect that, again, is, I'm not going to say easy to use and abuse, but once you're set up properly, and I'll show you some ways to do that, very easy to use and abuse. And again, instead of paying 12 mana for this commander, you're paying 6 again, to basically steal the creatures on the board. I mean, separately, because like if you steal the creatures, then you bounce it back to your hand, and then it's like, hey, I have to sacrifice those creatures. But you're like stealing, wiping, and then probably just sitting there and being like, cool, I got the best creatures now, I'm good to go. It's very interesting. Very, very powerful. This is definitely going to be, in my opinion, one of the most popular colorless commanders out there. I mean, the other Emrakul definitely is the other legal Emrakul. There's, of course, the original Emrakul that is not legal, Aeon's Dorn. But this one is incredibly powerful, very salt-inducing. Again, anytime you have just theft of an entire team, essentially, on a commander, permanent at that, unless it's ever dealt with, and this is going to be hard to deal with, and it's a 2-shot KO commander. Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities for this one. So on today's episode, let's talk about some budget buys and pricier picks to consider for this one. I mean, again, this commander does not come out for a while. Modern Horizons 3, I think it's like summer-ish time, right? Or late spring, early summer. Correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong on that, Regardless, yeah, a very, very, very powerful effect. Very powerful commander. And if you want to get a head start on this, maybe consider doing that. Regardless, check out that description. Check out the link in the description below. Now let's jump into the budget buys, the pricier picks. So first up, yeah, again, this commander does cost 12 mana, so you probably want to ensure that you can get your commander out. Because again, that first time, you're going to have to ensure that you can actually get to that 12 mana. You can't, like, cheat on that mana, essentially, unless you have, of course, like, Command Beacon or those kind of cards that can get your commander for your command zone to your hand, and then sure, discard. Okay, other than that, yeah, you've got a lot of ramp options, obviously, because you don't really care about mana fixing at all, because you are in colorless, obviously. So, cool, Everflowing Chalice, a great one, very flexible, 2 mana taps for 1, 4 mana taps for 2, etc., etc., etc. So, essentially, dump a ton of mana into this and other mana rocks, and then just, yeah, get your commander out and have an absurd cast trigger. Again, that is kind of the benefit of this, where, like, you're just building up all this, and you don't really need too many defenses to start, because your defenses are going to be, well, just deterrence from your commander being who your commander is, because your opponent's trying to dedicate their things to the board. It's going to be difficult for them, because if they say, have the largest army, and it's just disturbingly powerful, then you're like, oh, okay, cool. You're my target for when I cast my commander, and again, there is no stopping me stealing your creatures, so have fun with that. Of course, other very effective ones, like Worn Power Stone, very efficient. I mean, obviously, Soul Ring, but that one's slightly outside of my budget, again, more than $1. This one is much less than $1. 3 mana, enters battlefield tap, taps for 2, still very effective. Again, taps for more than half the amount you put into it. That is usually what you are looking for, especially when you have a commander that is very expensive like this one. Next up, this is really where the crux of things comes in. Umbilicus or like Blood Clock, those types of cards. Yeah, they're going to be good with this commander. Artifact for 4 at the beginning of each player's upkeep. The player may pay 2 life. If they don't, they return a permanent they control to its owner's hand. So this can actually be a downside to your opponents, essentially. It could potentially be an upside, so keep that in mind. But that being said, you're probably going to take the most advantage out of this. And again, it can actually just hurt your opponents, where they're like, I don't want to bounce anything back, I'll pay the 2 life. Whereas you're like, oh, cool, well, again, I'm done with that player's creatures that I stole, so, yeah, I'll bounce my commander back to my hand, and all of a sudden, sacrifice those creatures. Now I'm ready to cast this again, and then all of a sudden steal all your things, that player's things. And again, here's the thing, yeah, casting it for 12 again, not all that great. Or again, 12, 14, because, you know, command zone, commander tax, essentially. But if you're getting it back in your hand, and then you're like, oh, cool, yeah, I'll just discard it with the Key of the City. Yeah, artifact for 2, tap, discard a card to 1 target creature can be blocked this turn, comes untapped, you can pay 2 if you do draw a card. It's kind of like a delayed rummaging effect in a way, but again, more importantly, a free discard outlet for you to just say, hey, you know what, I got my commander back to my hand, let's just save some mana, essentially. Save half the amount of mana that you would be paying to recast from your command zone. I mean, not including commander tax, you know what I mean. But being able to essentially just discard it out of your hand, pay 6 instead, and then steal that player's creatures. Again, it's going to be impossible, not impossible, very, very difficult for your opponents to dedicate anything to the board once you are set up properly, because they're going to be like, if I just play my best creatures, they're just going to steal my best creatures again. And obviously, I'm not even talking about outside of this just being a discard outlet that allows you to, well, rummage through your deck as well. This is just a way to make your absurdly powerful commander unblockable. Though, do keep in mind, and let's read that text again just to make sure we're getting it correct. It says, protect from spells and permanents that were cast this turn. that does include your own. It does not say like opponents, okay? So if you are like playing this on the same turn and then you're like, oh, I'm going to make my commander unblockable. No, because you can't target your own commander with your own thing because it was cast this turn. So make sure you're keeping that in mind. That being said, yeah, being able to get your commander through on opponents, once a 2-shot KO, maybe even a 1-shot KO at some point, is pretty disturbingly good. I mean, even Gyreach Sanitarium, a great utility land, and because, again, you are in colorless, you can utilize basically all the utility lands you want. I mean, maybe keep like a couple of wastes in there in case someone like destroys a land, replace with a, basic kind of thing. But yes, you need to essentially be like, yeah, I can utilize like a Gyreach Sanitarium to just absurdly utilize this strategy of saving money on my commander. Saving mana. It'll slip right there because Emrakul's probably going to be very expensive. Legendary land taps for colors, pay 2 tap, each player loots, draw a card, discard a card. So again, although technically this is based like 3 mana to do that because it's pay 2 and tap this, so you're losing out on this mana. That being said, you're like, oh, okay, cool, I spent 3 to discard my commander essentially after drawing. And then, so I get to draw, which is nice, replace it. And then also, I get to spend 6, and so that's 9 in total instead of 12. So you're still saving out on that, even though, like, Key to the City is technically more efficient when it actually comes to mana use. That being said, you also want to make sure you're efficient with your commander and making the most out of it, and also making the most out of your opponent's creatures, because, again, let's read really quick on Emrakul. It does say gain control of all creatures target player controls. It does not say they gain haste, so maybe like a Crashing Drawbridge. 0/4 defender, tap, creature control, gain haste all turn. This is great just because your commander itself, again, is a 2-shot KO, maybe even a 1-shot KO in certain circumstances, and being able to swing with it right away can be huge, especially, again, if you're like, okay, that player over there has a great board state. Yeah, I'll take the creatures, and I'll also, well, swing with my commander and those creatures. Maybe don't take that player out because you don't want to lose those creatures permanently, but yeah, at least put them to half health when it comes to commander damage, and swing the rest of their army at someone else, or whatever you need to do. Being able to give your creatures haste is massive with this kind of a strategy in this kind of a commander. A lot of crazy things you can do with that. I mean, Rogue's Passage, yet another good utility land to consider. Very simple, very effective. Tap for colors, pay 4 tap, target creature can be blocked this turn. Again, when you have a commander that is just such a force like this one, again, inherently a 2-shot KO. Gross, but also with the potential, of course, to be a 1-shot KO very easily. Getting it through on your opponents is massive. Again, though, ironically, keep in mind, actually, no, it is cast, I believe. Let me double check, making sure I'm not incorrect on this. Permanents that were cast this turn. So technically, your lands would work, right? Rogue's Passage, you could still target your own Emrakul, even if you just played it on that same turn, because again, you're not casting a land. So keep that in mind. But yes, when it comes to actually turning your commander into a 2-shot KO, or probably 2-shot KO to a 1-shot KO, there we go. Of course, there's no ways to do it, like a Fire Shrieker. Again, keep in mind, you can't do it on the same turn it came down. Double Strike. Very simple, very effective. Your commander is hitting for 12, then 12 again. 24 damage in total. That is more than the 21 commander damage required to take someone out. So yes, your commander again, which is already a massive threat just for being like, yeah, I steal your creatures permanently. Ha ha ha. It's also like, oh, by the way, also I'm a 2, maybe even a 1-shot KO. So even if you're at full health and I'm just here, it doesn't take long for me to actually take you out. Okay, I get my commander out. Next turn I equip this. Rogue's Passage. You're gone. Thank you. Inquisitor's Flail, another way to do that as well. If creature would deal combat damage, deals double damage instead. If another creature would deal combat damage to it, it deals double damage to that creature. Basically, this doubles up the damage it gives out and gets, essentially. So this is a way to basically be like, well, it actually pairs with Double Strike quite well, but it doesn't really matter if you're hitting your opponent for 48 or 24 with your commander. That being said, yet another way to say, yeah, I'm just going to turn my commander into a 1-shot KO. So yeah, make sure you're keeping these kinds of cards in mind, though there is a technical downside to this, obviously the double the damage from creatures, but usually that's not going to come into play, especially again because your commander does have flying, so it's simply going to be able to get through on the players you want to get through on, or you have other ways to get through like Key to the City, Rogue's Passage, etc., etc. Another thing you can consider as well is Calling Deus. Artifact for 2 tap, sacrifice creature, put a charge counter on it, pay 1, sacrifice draw a card, free charge counter on it. This is an interesting kind of card where, again, you're stealing everyone's creatures, essentially. You're stealing all the creatures from one player, and you can utilize them in a lot of different ways. Sometimes you actually just want to get some card advantage out of that. You're like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, you had like, I don't even know, like a Llanowar Elves? I don't know. Something I don't really care too much about right now. And I'd rather have some cards. So I can just sacrifice those creatures ahead of time in case my commander is going to get destroyed at some point or removed or leaving the battlefield. So I can just actually get value out of those creatures that are going to be sacrificed anyways. Or if someone, say, has, I can't remember the name of the card, it's like 1 mana, gain control of all things back, or there's that land that does that as well. Being able to basically steal back the cards that were stolen from you. You know, each player who owns something gains control of it again. Those types of cards, homeward stretch, whatever. Like, there's a land that does it. Regardless, being able to be like, yeah, before you gain control of all your creatures again, I'd rather just sacrifice my commander to ensure that none of you can get it. So yeah, tap, sacrifice creature, get a charge counter on it, pay 1, sacrifice this, draw a card for your charge counter on it. You can draw an absurd amount of cards with this. I was going to say throughout the game, but in one burst, essentially. And again, having a sacrifice outlet can be helpful for a multitude of reasons with this commander. Now moving on to the pricier picks, again, cards that are more than $1, but might be within your budget. Got Erratic Portal. Card that I really wish they'd actually reprint, like, in a real way. I mean, this is like a list version, but still. Please actually reprint it. Very good card. Artifact for 4, pay 1, tap. Bounce target creature back to its owner's hand, lets it control, pays 1. So this actually has, well, a couple different, effects, essentially, where you're like, oh, that player tapped out. Okay, cool. Don't want them to hit me with that best creature that they have. Let's bounce it back to your hand. Very simple, very effective in that way, but also... yeah, hey, I'd like to get my Emrakul back to my hand so that I can sacrifice those creatures and then maybe, recast it to actually get your creatures as well. So I'm going to pay 1, tap. Hey, Emrakul's controller. Yeah, me. Would you like to actually bounce back to your hand? Yeah, I'm not going to pay the 1. Okay, bounces back to your hand. So being able to do that again, and again can be incredibly effective. And again, once you're set up with something like this and a discard out like Key to the City, your opponents need to be incredibly wary and also are going to have a hard time dedicating the board, which again is tough for them because they need to, because if they don't, you're just going to 1 or 2 shot KO them. A Crumbus Memorial, a very good card, and one that is $30. My goodness. 7-mana Ledger Artifact. Creature control have flying, first strike, vigilance, trample, haste, protection from black and from red. Lots of great things. Again, double flying, not really going to help you, but the trample and the haste are lovely. Also, vigilance and first strike. Everything is great. And protection. All the things are great, essentially, and having this as just a blanket, hey, Emrakul, you get this right away. Oh, and by the way, the creatures that I steal get this as well. Again, being able to be aggressive with that haste, that can be absolutely huge. Eldrazi Monument can also help you out in some different ways as well. I mean, it's thematic with Emrakul, right? But anyways, Artifact for 5. Creature control get ++1, have flying, and indestructible. ++1 is just a little redundant, I guess, when it's like, hey, I've got a 12-12. Now it's a 13-13. Yay. I mean, I guess it could come in handy in some ways. Regardless, the important thing here is indestructible. Being able to make all your creatures indestructible is huge. Of course, that flying and +1 can really help and apply to those creatures that you are stealing, which is great. There is a downside of this card, though. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice creature if you can't sacrifice this. So yes, again, you are kind of utilize this in a smart way where you're like getting it out after you've already stolen a ton of creatures. Do that, essentially, and all of a sudden, you got a very, very hard to deal with army. Making your commander even hard to deal with is quite nice. Next up, Ashnod's Altar, a gross card, a disgusting card, one that I don't know how is ever uncommon. Artifact for 3, sacrifice creature, add colorless. Yeah, I mean, this one can just get pretty gross with this commander because you're like, hey, all right, I steal your creatures by casting my commander. Thank you for those creatures. Sure, I'll take all 10 of your creatures, whatever they are. I have your creatures now. Awesome. Okay, I'll sacrifice your creatures for a lot of mana. Thank you for that. I'll bounce my commander back to my hand with one way or another. I'll discard a card with Key to the City, and I'll discard that, and I'll madness it out, and I'll just, gain some mana. Oh, I stole your creatures now. Okay, I'll sacrifice those creatures. I'll bounce it back to my hand in this other way. You can just keep basically stealing the entire board again and again and again when you can utilize their creatures for mana in very effective ways with something like this. It's a gross card. And again, it's kind of like a panic button. Again, if someone tries to, steal Emrakul or whatnot, it's going to be tough for them to do that again with that restriction, but you can always sacrifice your commander if you need to. Next up, 3 in Dynamo, Artifact for 4, tap for 3. Yeah, again, very efficient, very effective, just outside of my budget range. $1.18. Come on, Wizards, reprint this again, please. So effective, so efficient, but again, you might think, again, with a commander that costs 12, it's like, it's going to be problematic trying to get it out. No. Especially, again, when it has that big of an effect and it is a 2-shot KO win condition commander in and of itself. Yeah, you can dedicate a lot of resources. I'm talking like 16, 18, 20 mana rocks in your deck, essentially, to ensure that you can get your commander out very efficiently, very effectively, and then just dominate the game from there. So yeah, this is definitely a really good one. And again, the more and more efficient mana rocks you have, the more effective you are going to be. So yeah, Chromatic Ori. Ledger Artifact for 7. You may spend mana over mana in color. Who cares? You're in colorless. Tap for 5. That's really what you care about for this kind of a commander. 5 tap, draw a card for each color among all perks you control. Actually, that does come into play as well, so keep in mind, because you are stealing your opponent's creatures. So as long as those creatures are different colors, like if you're playing it's a 5-color deck, congratulations. You can start drawing 5 off of that most likely once you get going. But yeah, just being able to have efficient mana rocks, and this is quite the expensive one at $30, is going to be very, very effective for you. So make sure you're keeping that in mind. But now this episode is coming to a close, it's time for me to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know if you are excited or terrified or a little bit of both of this new commander. Yeah, I can definitely see this one being up there, maybe even at the top of the most popular colors commanders out there. Do I think it's going to be problematic? No. Do I think it's very powerful? Yes. Quite obviously, yes. Again, even though it is one of the most expensive colors commanders out there, or commanders out there of all time at 12 mana, again, you've got ways to ramp if you dedicate to do so. And again, you can do that because, again, your opponents are going to have a hard time actually dedicating themselves to get to the board because you're just going to be like, I'm just going to steal that. Again, all your things are mine. And also, by the way, I've got a 2-shot KO commander that is very hard for you to deal with. And I can very easily turn to a 1-shot KO commander to take you out. I didn't even mention, like, Infect. Grafted Exoskeleton could also just make your commander a 1-shot KO with that Infect as well. So make sure you're keeping that in mind too, I guess. Regardless, again, it's just kind of weird when we get like these really super early spoilers. I just looked up that Modern Horizons 3, apparently June 14th. So yeah, we are quite a ways away from that. That being said, yeah, I can see this being a chase card, very expensive card. And again, some of the cards that work well with it might go up in price sooner rather than later. So if you are excited about this commander, I mean, go ahead and start picking up some of those cards potentially. Make sure you check out that card list link in the description below. Your playgroup might even be nice enough to be like, yeah, sure, just proxy it right ahead of time. You know, if you feel like you're going to pick it up at some point, yeah, just proxy this commander. It's not going to come out for a while, but you can play with it. Could be pretty fun. And then maybe your friends regret that because they're like, oh, you stole my creatures again. And then you hit me for 12. Okay. You know what? Nope, you can't proxy this anymore. So yeah, make sure you talk to the playgroup ahead of time about that kind of stuff, though. Regardless, make sure you're staying to this channel for even more exciting quick takes and spoilers from whatever miscellaneous set we get spoilers from. And of course, as always, thanks again, and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.